We're Ariel.
And Michelle, and we're the Board Game Tutors.
Today we're going to be doing advanced concepts for the board game Forbidden Desert, specifically going over all the different adventurers, finally. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right. So we don't have the board fully set up the way you would normally at the start of the game because we've already gone over that.
Multiple times.
But here we're going to show you all the different adventurers. You could also call them characters or roles that can be played in the game. So you can see here all 6 of the options. And this is a 2 to 5 player game, so you won't be using all of the roles at once. You'll be using the appropriate number for the number of players that you have. And the rule book tells you that you should shuffle these cards and deal them out randomly. But in our experience, it seems to make more sense to choose which adventurers you want to play as, at least in order to have the best chance of beating the game.
Yeah, this game is not easy. So for at least the first few games that you play, we recommend choosing your characters. So that way you can get familiar with their powers and their advantages and, yeah, basically having your best shot at winning the game. Oh, and also, obviously, we probably mentioned this before, but on the Storm Tracker, it tells you here with the number of pawns how many players you play with. So this would be a 2-player match. This would be a 3-player match. If you flip it over, and I don't take too much time, there we go, 4 and 5. So just so you know, you can't play this solo unless you play multiple characters.
So make sure to set the black, that marker thing, you make sure to set it in the appropriate spot for the number of players that you have in the game.
This is already set for a later example, so no worries. We'll explain that later.
Yeah, you don't start that high on the storm level.
And so as you can see here, these are all the colors with their appropriate pawns. Apparently they think this is red. I think that's orange, but
yeah.
Whatever. So white, black, yellow. You haven't seen these guys yet, but yeah, we don't play with these so much. We primarily, in 2-player games that we play with these 2. So we'll start off with this, but yeah, just so you can see, these are all the different characters. And also, the last thing I want to cover is the water that each character has, because it is unique.
And then we'll be going into the special ability of each character. So first here for the water carrier, you can see they have 5. So obviously that's appropriate for the role of water carrier. That person will have the most water. They'll start out with 5 water.
At the beginning of the game. And yeah, no one else has 5 water. Everyone else just forgot to fill their water bottles a little bit more.
I guess they're carrying other equipment or something.
They're exploring.
They couldn't carry as much water.
They're archaeologist. Not a word.
Okay, so the explorer starts with 4 water. And the archaeologist only starts with 3, so that's, of course, a disadvantage.
He's too busy studying.
The meteorologist has 4 water. The climber has 3. And the navigator has 4. So the archaeologist and the climber are at the biggest disadvantage in terms of water level.
They start out with the level of 3, which is not very helpful. So, yeah, those are the least helpful in terms of carrying water at the beginning of the game.
And having a large, having an appropriate sized capacity of water. So not only is this what you start out with, but this is how much you can fill up to throughout the course of the game.
Right. Okay, let's go back to the water carrier and start going over special powers.
Okay, so the water carrier is fairly thematic. He can take 2 water from excavated water tiles for 1 action. So basically he has more of an opportunity to take water. And the second thing is give water to players on adjacent tiles for free at any time. So normally I think you have to be on the same tile to pass water, but in his case he just needs to be adjacent to someone else.
So this is really important here. So as you can see, if you look at the board, there are 3, one's a mirage, and 2 of them are actual water wells. We looked already, because we're cheaters. And here is 1 water well. So when that is excavated, only when that is excavated, any players that share that space, so let's say the green explorer excavated that space, both of those characters would get 2 water each. And that's it. They could not draw more water from this well. However, the water carrier, as his special rules indicate,
it's basically like he looks at the well and says, guys, there's still water in there. And then he gets more water. and he can share it. And he can share it more easily because, like we said, he only needs to be adjacent to you in order to give you some of his water. And the way that a character gives another adventurer water is that they lower their water level. So, like if you say, if the water carrier.
Let's go back up to full, shall we?
Yeah. So if he was on 5, if we can get that up there. And then if he's on the same or adjacent to the tile of the explorer up there,
Okay.
then the water carrier will lower his water level
for free.
And he can choose how much he wants to give. So let's say he wants to give 2. He would lower it down to the 3 level, and the explorer would add 2 to his level. So if he had started on 1, now he would be on 3.
Mm-hmm. So as you can see here, the water carrier is very versatile. He can throw water balloons at other people, and they'll just drink them. But he can give it to people on adjacent tiles. So adjacent for him means obviously up, down, left, and right. That's just like regular movement.
Mm-hmm.
So he can take water from excavated water well tiles, even that like normally people can only get it at the very beginning when it's first excavated. He can continue to get water. So he, in general, is a pretty good addition to your team because I guess if you want to think about it thematically, it's a pretty poor explanation, but maybe everyone else thought it was a mirage after they got water from it the first time, and they're just suffering from heat stroke or something, and so now they can't get water from the well except the water carrier. He's the only person who can get water from an excavated well.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, like we said, he can hand off for free water to anyone else on adjacent tiles. So he could, for example, say, let's say here, let's say he was here. He could go 1, 2, and let's just say that was his last action, because maybe he went, I don't know, like 1, flip this over, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So he used up all his actions, but he can give water for free to
Right.
adjacent tiles. So that is one way you can save yourself and your, I was going to say opponents, your fellow adventurers, by using your water wisely as a water carrier.
Mm-hmm. And because he can do this at any time, it doesn't have to be his turn in order for him to pass along water.
For example, if the explorer was here, and then he went here, now he's there, so the water carrier for free could give him water, and he could go on exploring on his merry way.
Yes.
So that is that.
Okay, so that's the water carrier. Then we have the explorer. His power is rather simple. He can move, clear sand, and use dune blasters diagonally. So basically diagonal is his keyword.
So normally adjacent is what matters for every other character in this game. He, however, can go diagonally. Hey guys, we can go up and to the left.
Yeah.
Like, we can't go, you can.
Yeah, he likes to explore
the desert.
Yeah, the diagonal movement possibilities. So yeah, so he can move. So that means he can move a bit quicker sometimes, depending on where you're trying to go, of course.
So for example, if he was here, he could go 1, 2, 3, or 3 and 4 if he wanted to be all roundabout, and I'm knocking people down over here. But yeah.
Yeah, so he can move in a diagonal way that just kind of makes him more versatile. He can get to different places faster.
And as usual, he can go through places that have 1 sand, but if they have 2, he cannot go through them.
Right, because that would be blocked.
Mm-hmm. And also, let's say here, if he was there and he happened to have a dune blaster in his possession, then he could use that dune blaster to completely clear this tile off.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one way in which everyone else can only use dune blasters up, down, left, and right adjacent, but he can break the rule and go diagonally.
Right.
And also, if he wanted to, he could just do regular sand clearing diagonally as well. So he could remove 1, 2, however many actions he wanted to use.
Right. So we just like how versatile the movement is with him, and he just gives you more options of what you can do in terms of direction.
Mm-hmm. Let's recall you explorer and talk about the next person.
Okay. So then we have the archaeologist. He also has a rather straightforward ability, which is to clear 2 sand from 1 tile per action. So it does have to be sand that's on the same tile. He can't like divide it and take one from one tile and one from another.
For example, this and this. He couldn't use one action to do this and this. He'd have to use one action for this and one action for this. They are not on the same desert tile.
Right. And of course, he couldn't do it diagonally either.
Right. So that would be illegal.
But what he can do is to clear sand that's on the same tile 2 at a time. So here he's adjacent to that big pile of sand. So he can take off
1,
2.
2.
That's a single action.
3, 4.
That's another single action. So he's done 2 actions. And finally, for the last one, there's just 1 sand left. So you can take that off for another action.
And like we said, you can't break that up. You couldn't do this one and this one. It has to be on the same tile.
Yeah.
So that would be his main ability. He can clear sand like a madman.
In a good way.
A good madman. So, he has no other special skills, but this is a very useful adventurer for clearing sand out of the way when you're getting really low on sand tiles in the sand pile.
Right. You just have to be careful with him because he doesn't hold as much water as other adventurers do.
So yeah, you want to be really cagey with him in terms of keeping him in a safe position, using different defensive measures to keep him from losing all his water.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the water carrier is pretty crucial for him, and also other tactics as well, which we'll explain in another video.
Mm-hmm.
Next player.
Okay, then we have the Meteorologist. So the Meteorologist's ability is pretty cool. You have basically 2 different things that you can do if you play as the Meteorologist. So first we have spend actions to draw fewer storm cards, 1 card per action, at the end of your turn. So it's important to note here, this is only at the end of the Meteorologist's turn. So some people have gotten confused and thought that she could stop storm cards from getting drawn on other people's turns as well, or they might not have realized that the storm happens after each player's turn. So just keep in mind, this only applies to the Meteorologist's own turn and not anyone else's turn.
The way you can remember that is this is her special power. This applies to no one else.
Yes.
And at no other time besides her turn.
Yeah.
Because remember, as you can see on the back of these cards, the order of play, you take 4 actions, then you draw storm cards. So that's everybody's turn. That's their whole entire turn.
Mm-hmm.
So her special actions, special powers that break the normal rules are these 2 rules, which we're going to explain the second one in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, 1 action equals 1 fewer storm card.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at this level here, if we were at 4, anywhere in this 4 range, you would always draw 4 cards. What would happen if you use 1 action, Michelle?
You would only draw 3 cards because you'd eliminated 1 of the storm cards.
And you would not mess with this track at all.
Right, yeah, it's just for the Meteorologist's turn. At the end of her turn, you would flip 3 storm cards instead of 4.
That's what fingers are for. So, and then if she'd use 2 actions,
then there would be 2 fewer cards, so she would just flip 2 storm cards.
And then 3, just 1.
Yeah.
And then, you, obviously, this only works up to 4. If you use all 4 actions, you would draw no storm cards. So
yes.
That is one option.
Right. And at the same time, you wouldn't have done anything unless you had a gear card, an equipment card that you could use, where it says to do this at any time, therefore it doesn't count as an action. But if you simply gave up all your actions not to draw storm cards, you basically skipped your turn. So that's probably not wise in most situations.
Yeah. If you wanted to risk it, there we go. You could take your 4 actions. Actually, no 4 actions, because like Michelle said, you gave up all 4 of your actions for a level 4 storm level. So yeah, it's not necessarily a good thing to do that because you just gave up 4 things that you could do.
Right.
So yeah. So basically, you wouldn't have to draw storm cards. Obviously, for 3, you couldn't use all your actions for that. That would only be 3. But yeah.
Right. Then you'd still get to do one more thing. So it might be more advantageous in that situation.
Right. So yeah. And obviously for 5 and 6, you can't stop all the storm cards coming from that coming for you then.
Right.
So yeah. Just got to face the music and face the storm.
Okay,
So
so
that was
that's
part one.
right. So then the second special ability that the meteorologist has is spend one action to look at storm cards equal to the storm level and optionally place one at the bottom of the deck. So this is pretty straightforward. You would be using up one action in order to do this, and you, the meteorologist, would see what the storm level was. So in this case, it's 4. So you would take the top 4 cards of the storm deck, the ones that are coming up at the end of your turn.
This is your one action that you just use up.
So looking at those cards, keep them in order, because it's important to remember you don't get to reorder these, you just get to look at them.
Yeah. So you see this is the exact order that it would have come out in. So you look and see, oh, okay, well, there's no sun beats down cards. There's no storm level rises cards.
Right. It's just regular storm cards.
So you look at this and like, that moves 1, that moves 3, that moves 2, that moves 1. So preferably, I guess, if you wanted to, it is optional. You can remove one of these cards. Let's just say we remove this 3. Don't change the order of anything else. That is not part of your action. So we'll take this 3, take it out. It goes on the bottom. Now just keep that in mind. Okay, the 3 is going to come out at the very end of the deck.
Right. So it's up to you whether you want to place one of the cards at the bottom of the deck.
And so that exact order goes back on the top.
And then in that case, you're kind of pushing your luck in terms of you don't know what the 4th card's going to be now because you didn't get to look at the next card.
So you can use a combination of these two. But let's just say for your second action, you did the exact same thing. 1, 2, 3. You know what those are going to be already, but the 4th one's going to be new. Look, that's the sun beats down.
Yeah, so in this case, you might choose to put the sun beats down on the bottom because you might not be ready for it to come up next. You might not be sufficiently protected from the sun. And if you're going to lose too much water, well, that's one way that you can lose the game. So you want to be careful with that.
So optionally, you don't have to, but it probably is wise to put the sun beats down on the bottom. Now remember, there's a 3 and a sun beats down on the bottom. The sun beats down is on the very, very bottom. Okay, so this goes back on top.
And then once again, you wouldn't know what the 4th card was going to be if you had to draw 4 cards at the end of your turn.
So let's push our luck again. 1, 2, 3. We already know what those are. 4. The 4th one is storm picks up. So probably want to get rid of that one too.
So an interesting thing you can do here is you can combine the two special actions that the meteorologist can do. So you might use one of the actions in order to change what's on top of the storm deck, and then you might use another action to draw fewer cards. So if you draw 1 fewer card, then you're only going to get the top 3, and you've seen that the 4th card was not what you wanted. So you might move the 4th card, or you might not, but you might use your other action to make sure that you don't draw that card.
So yeah, and just to be clear, you can't change the order. I'm not sure if that was perfectly clear in what Michelle just said, but you can't change the order of the cards, but you can get rid of one and send it to the bottom of the deck.
Yes.
So we could do that with, this is our 3rd action as the meteorologist. So we could grab this storm picks up card and stick it on the bottom, or using our 4th action, because we've only done 3, you can grab just the top 3 cards. So then you know you're not going to grab that storm picks up.
Yeah, because in that case, your 4th action would be to draw 1 fewer storm card.
So in that case, that would be top 3, which you would fulfill in the correct order. So the meteorologist can be semi-confusing, but you just have to keep in mind, so you have to know what the storm level is, but just reiterate that one more time. Spend one action to draw 1 fewer card. So you have to look at the storm level, see what the level is, subtract 1 for every action that you give up. And you can't use that action for anything else. Secondly,
you can spend 1 action to look at storm cards equal to the storm level and optionally place 1 at the bottom of the deck. So you would look at the number of cards that was appropriate depending on whatever the storm level was, and then you keep them in the same order, and if you want to, you can put 1 of them on the bottom of the deck.
And you can't change the order of what you saw. But now you know.
Yeah, now you know what's coming.
The more you know, the more you can do. All right, let's shove these guys aside. They're all done.
So we've got 2 more adventurers to talk about. First, we have the climber. He's the black pawn. He can move to blocked tiles. Apparently, he knows how to climb through sand. So he can move to blocked tiles, and if you're the climber, you may take one other player with you when you move. And finally, you and other players on your tile cannot be buried. So that's basically a special note. If the climber is on a tile and it gets 2 or more pieces of sand on it, the climber can still leave, and anyone who's with him, as long as he's still on that tile, can also leave. So he somehow keeps them from actually getting, I was going to say snowed in, sanded in, however you want to say that. So he kind of protects whoever he's with. As long as he's still on the tile with them, they can actually leave even if the tile says that it's blocked.
So, for example, let's say, let's be someone we already used. The archaeologist was here. And then the storm moved around like crazy. And I'm just going to transfer this. He got totally buried. So, obviously, I'm just wrecking the board. But, so he got completely buried. The climber, if he was there, can go 1, 2.
Yes, because the climber can move through blocked tiles and he can take one other adventurer with him.
So yeah, that's his special ability. Like we said, his water level is a severe handicap to him being really useful. And obviously, so he can go to block tiles, but if there was a piece of equipment there, let's say the engine was here, he could not grab the engine while all this sand was here.
Right.
He'd have to clear the sand off first.
Right.
So even though he can go to a tile that is blocked, he can't do anything there until the sand level's low enough to do what he needs to do.
Right.
So if you wanted to excavate that tile, all the sand would have to be off. If you wanted to grab a part, it would also need to be clear and excavated, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so in our opinion, it's better to add in the climber if you have more players. Like if you have 5 players and you're just looking for other roles to fill out your team. He wouldn't be one of our first choices.
And yeah, he can swoop in and rescue somebody, but he's pretty fragile as well. All right, let's go over the last character. 1 second.
So finally we have the Navigator, and that's the yellow pawn. So let's see what he does. You can move another player up to 3 unblocked tiles per action. So the Navigator can actually move other people's pawns, and he does need to ask them before he does so.
Hey, can I move you first?
And this says includes tunnels, so he can move people through tunnels, just like normal tunnel movement. And the Explorer and the Climber may be moved according to their special abilities. So the Navigator could move the Climber through a blocked tile because the Climber's special ability is that he can move through blocked tiles.
And the Explorer?
The Explorer can be moved diagonally because that's his special ability. He can always go diagonally, as long as things aren't blocked, of course.
So, yeah, basically, the Navigator can control other players' movement, other pawns' movements, up to 3 tiles.
Yes.
Per action. So he's still limited. He can't move himself, mind you. So, for example, if he was on the board and the Climber was on the board, then he could move the Climber 1, 2, 3.
Yes, because the Climber has his special ability. He can still move through blocked tiles.
And so he has 4 actions. He just used up 3. He could then go here, for example.
So he can move other characters pretty far, but there are only so many uses for that. So we kind of group him with the Climber in terms of being someone who we think you would most likely want to add them in if you have a lot of people playing, not as one of your first choices if you only have 2 or 3 players.
So the Navigator could also move the Explorer 1 diagonally, 2 diagonally, and 3 just because he wants to send him there. So obviously, yeah, you have to ask permission. The other player won't like you if you try to move their pieces without asking them.
Yes.
So, yeah, that is that.
All right, so those are all the adventurers that you can play as in Forbidden Desert.
If you guys have any questions, comments, clarifications, please don't hesitate to leave us a comment or send us an email. We appreciate all your likes, subscribes, sharing this with your friends. And yeah, we really appreciate all your patronage and checking out all of our videos. And yeah, if there's anything that you want to know, just let us know.
All right. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.